that brings us nicely to Dwayne Casey and the Toronto Raptors.
Ooh,
We'll jump right to our Wrap It Up segment where we discuss the Toronto Raptors in the week that was and what's going on with them. And the biggest news for sure, the Raptors back-to-back wins in tough places in Houston and in New Orleans. So we talked a lot about, our thoughts of what the Raptors season would be, where we see the finishing. We've talked a lot about that. And so we were kind of down early on. So the question here early on is, how much of your opinion is of the Raptors overall is swayed by their back-to-back wins this week, Webby?
not much. Well, I mean, we knew the Raptors are who we thought they were. They're the top 3 team in the Eastern Conference. They're very good, and I was way more impressed with the win against the Rockets than I was against the kind of short-handed Pelicans who were easing Rondo back in. But that said, a couple weeks ago, we were, I think maybe even last week, we were wondering what was going on with the weird rotation that Dwayne Casey was using, with using all these different players and just having this weird fluid lineup. But you know what? Seems like, hey, it's a next man up kind of thing. We saw Norm Powell go down with the hip pointer. And because Dwayne Casey's been giving all these young guys a lot of run, looked like OG was ready to step into that starting role and really not miss a beat. I know his numbers weren't that good, but if you were watching those games, you could see OG really knew what he was doing, and it wasn't a surprise to him or his teammates what he was on the floor to do.
Yeah, the biggest thing with OG when I watch him is he doesn't look scared at all. And that's a key thing, especially for a rookie to just feel like you belong. Sometimes you can look at someone and tell that they're kind of nervous or they're kind of hesitant. He doesn't really have that in his game at all. And your first start in the NBA comes against James Harden. You're guarding Harden. It's a very tough position to be in, and he didn't back down at all. I mean, Harden still had a great game, of course, but, OG makes a lot of plays that sometimes don't really show up in the stat sheet. I know he put up 16 against the Rockets, and his second night of the back-to-back wasn't nearly as good stat sheet wise, but he is making impactful plays, whether it's getting key rebounds, whether it's, playing solid lockdown defense. I mean, I got to ask a question. Should he stay in the starting lineup even when Norm Powell comes back?
I think maybe for the first couple of games when Norm's healthy, but this team is built on having Norm in that starting lineup. And I think that the experience of putting OG up with the starters for a couple of games is going to pay off more down the road. And I think moving him back to the bench is a good move for any rookie.
Yeah, I mean, the Toronto Raptors too, it's great because we were talking about the ball movement a lot and, Kyle Lowry leading this new offense. So far, I think it's been going pretty well just because the last few games, he's still putting up his numbers. DeRozan's still getting his numbers. But I think the thing that maybe Lowry will figure out or realize as the season goes along and they continue with this fluid ball movement offense is it's way better for him too, because he'll be able to get easier baskets, right? He'll be able to get those spot up jumpers in the corner because the ball movement is so good, because there's other people, whether it's Van Fleet or DeLon Wright when he gets back healthy, or OG driving and kicking it out to a wide open Kyle Lowry. The pressure is not on him to create every single play or drive in for those hard and ones and taking the beating that he normally would on a regular basis where he has to create every play. It's interesting to see just how that offense looked. And I know the Houston game, you're not going to have they're not going to shoot like that all the time.
Every game.
But it was just a positive sign, right? And especially to see a guy like CJ Miles, who has been up and down so far.
Who looked like he was left for dead the last couple of weeks.
Right? It was good to see him kind of get off and get some shots up, knock down some big threes, and shoot some threes with confidence. That's the biggest thing, I think, with three-point shooters, right? Where you see them take for lack of a better term, the J.R. Smith three where you're like, oh, no, but it goes in. You know what I mean? That's when you see a three-point shooter knock down those threes, but even have the confidence to take those threes is such a better, it's a welcome sign for CJ Miles because the Raptors need him, especially to lead that second unit as a vet, right?
I hate to bring it back to the Sixers, but it's like JJ Redick too. And this is what I was telling a buddy. It's every once in a while, I'll see JJ Redick just hoist up a three with 20 seconds left to go on the shot clock. And I'm like, oh my God. But then I think, listen, shooters shoot, man. And that's what they're going to do. And if they want to be successful in the NBA, you're going to have to live through the ups and the downs. But if they're a true shooter, somebody who can get you that 3-point shot, you got to live with those.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Last thing here with the Raptors, obviously we're waiting word for sure on DeLon Wright. He left the last game.
Oh, that looked nasty, man.
He's out for sure for the next game against the Knicks, depending on whenever you're listening to this. How much will losing DeLon Wright, if he is out for a long time, which it does, I mean, it looks like he'll be out for a while. How much will that affect him, do you think, going forward?
Hey, again, I mean, I hate to beat a dead horse, but I guess this is why Casey and the team was running these 12-man units. Is because if you do run into an injury problem, I don't think it's going to be that big of a drop-off to bring in a Fred VanVleet off the bench to spell DeLon Wright's minutes. He's been seeing the court. He's been getting a little bit of run, so it's not going to be a surprise to him of what he sees. It's not going to be a surprise to his teammates that he plays with if his minutes start to pick up.
Yes, shout out to Coach Casey. Big up to Coach Casey.
I think we were wrong. I mean, both of us were questioning this strategy, and I think that it was maybe like a really good piece of foresight by Casey and the Raps to kind of see this team and say, well, listen, if we get into injury trouble, we could be in some serious problems. So let's get these guys as much run as we can with them together, see what clicks, see what doesn't. So if the worst does happen, we're not grasping at straws.
Yeah, credit where credit's due. And I was definitely questioning maybe not so much the style of play, but more so how the style of play would work with this personnel. And I mean, I'm not swayed like huge. It's not like I think the Raptors, are Eastern Conference Finals for sure. Like I'm not swayed that much because, like you said, I think they are what they are. And I'm not, just as much as I'm not going to, think that, because they lost to the Celtics without Kyrie, it's not like I think that drops them to 8th. You know what I mean? I'm not going to say them beating the Rockets puts them at the top of the conference. I think they are what they are in that like 3, 4, 5 range of the Eastern Conference. And so
I would take 2, 3, 4, man. I really would. Yeah. They're a really talented team, and I think they're well coached, man. I'm not sure. I don't know with Dwayne Casey. Is he a good coach?
Well, here's the thing, right? I had this conversation with McAuliffe after one of our shows earlier this week, and I was saying like one of the weirdest things about this whole era of Raptors basketball is Dwayne Casey is obviously, the numbers will show he's the best coach in franchise history, but I don't know if he gets enough credit in terms of where Kyle and DeMar are at and where this team is, right? Like the reason why the Raptors are this good, because remember how the pieces came back after the Rudy Gay trade, right? This team, it's always been about the sum of the parts, and he stayed on them consistently about playing defense, even nagging them about playing defense, right? And that's really what made this team what it is into having the best run in franchise history. That's directly from Coach Casey preaching his work ethic, the pound the rock or whatever the mantra was, like staying on them when they had those little lulls within the season. As annoyed as Kyle might be, that helped Kyle Lowry become the 3-time All-Star. Like the success of the Raptors helped Kyle Lowry like achieve his goal of becoming the perennial All-Star in the NBA. And
not only that, but he took DeMar DeRozan, who was a really good one-dimensional player, to a excellent two-dimensional player.
Two-dimensional player. Okay.
I would say that DeRozan, like, listen, man, you watch the NBA, man. For a guy who can score that easily as DeRozan can, I think he is a very good defender.
Oh, okay. I'll give you that.
And you know what? I credit Casey with that. Just like you say, getting in his ear.
Yeah, Casey, I don't think Casey gets enough credit just for like what he's turned this team into. Is he like, everyone gets mad at like the play calling and the offense and all that. Like I will go to my grave saying that in the NBA, coaches call plays all the time and players just bust the plays, right? Like players are just going to do what they're going to do, right? So it's not like he's calling ISO every single time down the floor in the fourth quarter. That's just what Lowry and DeRozan are doing, right?
Yeah, so and you know what? That's what works too.